Danny Green became known as Cleveland's Celtic warrior in the 1970s when he waged war on the Italians, the Mayfield Road mob. One by one, Danny destroyed every mafia hitman that came after him. In his quest for power, he went from Union president to FBI informant to leader of the Celtic Club, Cleveland's Irish mob. When he was finally killed by a car bomb in 1977, the trial of Danny's assassins brought Cleveland's La Cosa Nostra to its knees. In death, Danny succeeded in his life's work. He brought down the mob.
Everyone wants to come after me, we're over by the Celtic Club. I'm not hard to find.
Daddy wanted to be the boss of everything, and he didn't care who he hurt or what he hurt.
He wanted to take over the rackets, labor racketeering, gambling, vending machines.
He worked under the auspices of the FBI. He got away with a lot of things, including murder, because the FBI protected him.
The house was blown up, and he got out and dusted himself off and walked away. He had 9 lives.
Danny Green, physically, if he were in a fight or if he was going to get you, you were going to die.
They tried a number of times to kill him, and it didn't happen. So I guess he thought he was invincible.
He was in the news before he was killed. He was in the news when he was killed, and he's still in the news. He has a mark in history forever.
Italians always thought they were better than we were. He hated them. And he knew that they were the ones that he had to protect everybody from.
They were taking over everything. And Danny felt the Irish had to overcome. And his way was going to be a better way.
I'm going to tell you that exactly how this happened, almost unbelievable.
Daniel John Green was born November 14, 1933 in Cleveland, Ohio. At the age of 6, Daniel was taken in by his grandfather, who lived on a short block of modest homes in a neighborhood known as Collinwood.
I met Daniel Green when I was in the 7th grade, and he was in the 8th grade at St. Jerome School. Danny was always in the hallway. He never did his work. The grandfather slept all day because he worked all night. Danny never came to school. He was always dirty, and he grew up all by himself. I mean, as a little kid, nobody seemed to care about him. His mother died. His father left him. He had a terrible beginning in his little life. So Danny never had anyone really to give him some rules, and so his life was a mess. So he tried to find peace by finding order, and the order was, get out of here, bang. That's the order. It wasn't his fault. It's his background that made him be who he was, I believe. He was always quiet. Quiet people don't necessarily mean they don't know anything. It means that they are paying attention, keeping it all inside, and then it blows up.
In 1951, Daniel dropped out and enrolled in the U.S. Marine Corps. He was promoted to corporal in 1953 and became a firearms instructor, a skill that would serve him well later in life. In 1955, while working on the Collinwood rail yards, he met an attractive brunette named Nancy. They were quickly married, and Daniel left the railroad and went to work on the docks as a stevedore.
I used to see him, and I didn't think that much. He was just, everyday guy. Then it seemed like before you know it, I was married to him.
Growing up, Dad was pretty great. I mean, he was just our dad. We didn't know what he did, and he was pretty strict with us. Like, when he'd come home, we'd have to be at home, sitting there waiting for him to come home. He was just the greatest dad to us. He was our dad.
His Irish charm helped him to quickly become a popular member of Local 1317 of the International Longshoremen's Association. It wasn't long before Danny decided his future was not going to be of such manual labor. In his spare time, Danny busied himself reading. He was especially fond of books about Celtic and Irish history, particularly legends of fearless Celtic warriors. In time, it would become obvious that Danny was emulating the fierce warriors of his ancestry. It wasn't until 1961, when he was elected president of Local 1317 of the International Longshoremen's Association, that he had attained real power.
It was early in my career. A group of longshoremen were terrorizing the northeast section of Ohio. And we had a lot of reports, but no one would prosecute. We talked about it, and we decided to go and visit the head of the Longshoremen's Union and see if we could get him to help us stop the assaults. We weren't prepared for what we ran into. Many years have passed. My impressions are still the same. I walked into the ocean. I walked into a sea of green. Everything was green. The walls were green. The desks were green. He was dressed in green. He had this blondish red hair. Of course, it was Danny Green, and he at that time was the head of the Longshoremen's Union. And he asked why we were there, and we told him what was going on. And we asked for his help in stopping it. And whew, he started telling us about the Italians. And he used every ethnic slur I could ever imagine. And I think he made some up in describing these Italians from Collinwood. And it was obvious he didn't like them.
Danny's feud with the Italians on Murray Hill could be traced back to his childhood, growing up in the Italian neighborhood of Collinwood.
My name is Tony Hughes. I won the Golden Gloves 1953, 54, 55. Rocky Marciano was my manager. I'm retired now, but I did work for the Teamsters under Jackie Presser. More or less, I was their bodyguards. Jackie Presser became the head of the Teamsters nationally. He was my boss. He was my friend. Danny wanted to be the boss of everything. And Danny couldn't be the boss of everything. There were bigger and better people around to take care of that. And he had no respect for anybody. He killed the guys that work with him. You know what I mean? He was really a no good guy. In my viewpoint, I don't know how anybody else thinks so. Everybody I hung around with and talked to didn't like him. The human life didn't mean much to Danny. Jackie wanted nothing to do with him, with the longshoremen or anything. And I walked up to him and I told him, Danny, we don't want you here, just get out. He said, I never did nothing against you. I said, but I don't like your people and I don't like you. Get out. He says, remember you're throwing me out. I says, I'll remember all my life. Don't worry about it.
Danny's tenure at the ILA was marked by controversy after controversy. When details of a scam that Danny was running were printed in the Cleveland Plain Dealer, his presidency came to an abrupt end. Many believe around this time, Danny became a confidential informant to the FBI in exchange for a reduction on the $10,000 fine the court had levied.
One thing that's not known too much about Danny Green is that he was an FBI informant since 1964.
When we grabbed Danny's satchel, and it was his phone book, and in the phone book was a name and a number, Dr. Falls, 522-1400. Well, everybody knows 522-1400 is the Cleveland FBI office here. Dr. Falls was the code name that Danny Green had to use to get to the person who was running him.
Danny Green's secret life as an FBI informant might not have been as secret as he thought.
Danny was an FBI informer. I mean, everybody knew that. He was an FBI informant and he was a killer. Can't do both.
I think the FBI at one time figured they had an albatross around their neck. This guy was great with information, but he was also a really bad and dangerous guy.
After Danny's time with the longshoremen, Frank Brancato, a prominent Cleveland mobster, asked him to organize the various waste haulers in the Cleveland area.
He was involved in trying to organize the Longshoremen Union. He also tried to organize the Trash Haulers Union. He had a lot of friends, both lower echelon friends on the street, and he had high government official type friends on the street.
It was shortly after the disbanding of the Cleveland Solid Waste Trade Guild that Danny became involved with a prominent figure in the Cleveland numbers racket named Shonder Burns.
Shonder Burns was Cleveland's most notorious Jewish racketeer. He had a history going back to the 1920s. In the 1970s, he was on his way to retirement. Very, very well respected in organized crime circles. He was allied with the mafia members like John Scalish, Angelo Leonardo. Wasn't a member because he was Jewish, but he was associated and allied with them.
I've represented such people as Shonder Burns, Virgil Ogletree, Don King, the fight promoter. Shonder Burns had an ability to get along with the people out on Mayfield Road because they grew up together. A lot of them grew up together. They knew each other from way, way back. And he was well connected. He was very well connected. Shonder Burns had a very strong relationship with Leonardo, Licavoli, and Scalish.
Sean's job was to keep the five families in line, keep them from overpaying, underpaying on numbers, settling disputes between the families, and taking a slice of the money up to the area we call the Hill, Murray Hill, and paying off organized crime people. He started working for Sean. There was an episode with a bomb that Danny really didn't know too much about bombs. And he had a fuse that he didn't quite understand, but he knew enough to know that it was burning faster than he thought. He tried to throw it out of the car and it bounced back in. And he jumped out, the car blew up. That was part of his mystique, that he had cat with 9 lives and all that.
You heard of the cat with 9 lives. And obviously Danny had 9 of them. He was stabbed. By all rights, he should have been dead. It was an inch. The stab wound was an inch away from his heart.
There was another time when he came knocking on the back, crawling up the back sliding doors, where a bomb had gone off, and he crawled up over the freeway. Ironically, it happened right behind our house in the freeway. He crawled in, and he was singed from head to toe. His eyebrows, eyelashes were off, and he crawled in. And I don't know why. For some reason, I guess we were just so naive, and that was Dad. Mom cleaned him up.
And after he survived that one, we knew that there would be many, many more.
Danny's reputation as an invincible Celtic warrior was growing stronger, but with Danny's tenuous partnership with Shonder Burns about to explode into an all-out feud, just how long could the luck of the Irish last?
Shonder Burns had loaned Danny Green about $70,000 for Danny to open up a cheat spot. It would be a drinking and a place where they could gamble, would stay open after hours, but the money was lost to a drug dealer who had connections to Shonder Burns, who Shonder wanted involved in the project. Some of the money came from a New York mafia family, so Shonder needed to pay that money back. And he blamed Danny. Danny blamed him. Danny said it wasn't his fault because he didn't want this drug dealer involved in the project.
Well, what had happened was he had taken the money that Danny and Sean had given him, bought cocaine with it, was going to cut the cocaine and make a nice profit, cut it, step on it. They call it 4 times, pay $80,000. He'd make $300,000 or more by doing that. But instead he threw it out the window and flushed it down the toilet. So Les and I took him back to jail, and the war between Danny and Sean was on.
Danny's venture had cost Shonder Burns $70,000. Burns was forced to pay the debt to the Gambinos out of his own pocket.
6 for 5. In 10 weeks, you had to pay back. If you borrowed $1,000, you had to give us $1,200 back within 10 weeks.
He borrowed this money from this guy, and Shonder Burns guaranteed the debt. Then Danny Green, with his bravado, said, I ain't paying you shit. And that was their feud.
To settle his dispute with Green, Burns put up $25,000 with a bookie for Green to be murdered. One of the first to try and collect on Shonder's bounty was Mike Fredo. Fredo fired 3 shots from a moving car while Danny was jogging at White City Beach.
Mr. Green made a statement to the effect that he was involved in this shooting. However, he stated he fired in self-defense. He stated he was walking his dogs in White City, at which time a car approached, and the people in the car fired at him, at which time he fired back.
Fredo and his longtime friend Gus Palladino were in the park that they knew Green was in the habit of walking the dogs here at White City Beach. Green returned 2 shots from about 25 feet away, apparently one going wild, the other described by police as a lucky shot, hitting Fredo in the head.
Danny told me that, he said, you know, everybody thought that I was a crack shot. He said that he was shooting at me. I just hit the ground the way I was trained to do in the Marine Corps. And I got off a shot, somehow hit him between the eyes. He says it was a lucky shot, but if everybody wants to think I'm a crack shot, let them.
Danny went on to start Emerald Industrial Relations with the backing of mobster Frank Brancato. Danny Green's extortion tactics brought downtown construction to a halt.
He would shake down buildings. One time he told me one of the things he says, you know, the first time I met him, he said, "No, I've done a lot of good in this town. I've helped these buildings get built." In construction, the phrase at that time was glass is last, right? So you build all the structure, the glass goes in last, then you start working on the interior. Well, you can't put the glass in unless you put the ironwork in, right? The frame. Well, he had the iron workers. So he would go to a building as they're going along and say, you know, I want you to hire me as a consultant for whatever, however much money. And at first, especially if they were an out-of-town construction company, would say, well, "What the heck are you? We're not going to hire you." All of a sudden, the iron workers would stop and they couldn't get anything done.
In 1974, Danny Green left his faithful and long-suffering wife, Nancy.
Danny was very Jekyll and Hyde. I had a lot of bad experiences through the Hyde part. He would be very nice, then he could be very violent. It mattered what trigger you pulled that day. You finally say you had enough when it becomes your family's involved. I had 2 daughters to worry about, and if it was the mob, I didn't want them coming after my kids. You know, you read about it every day, you heard about it in instances. And Danny thought it was best that we separate at this time.
Through his involvement in various rackets, Danny had earned enough money to move his family into a nice home in the Cleveland suburbs.
Where we lived, there was a lot. There was a bank president, there were doctors, there were like a lot of every family had their own little thing. So it was just my dad, when he'd come home, he was so charismatic that they'd see him and the kids loved him. He was like how he was in Collinwood, he was like that in our little small neighborhood of Willoughby. They respected him and loved him. You know, they loved him, they liked him a lot. He was a good guy to everybody.
After moving into an apartment on Waterloo Road, Danny quickly garnered a reputation in the neighborhood as being a protector and a benefactor. He became known affectionately as the Robin Hood of Collinwood.
He had no money. He gave it all away. If he heard of a neighbor, of one of the kids that played football for me, couldn't pay his high school tuition, and he paid it. I had a woman come up to me one time and she said, "I heard you're after Danny. What's the matter with you? He's the nicest man in the world. There's no criminal, blah, blah, blah." She really reamed me out, and she ended up by telling me that her washing machine had broken and Danny had bought her a new washing machine. People all over the neighborhood would get food from him.
He was a good man for the neighborhood, took care of a lot of families that were in need. Gave turkeys away for Christmas, gave turkeys away for Thanksgiving.
The man who owned the grocery store, one of the grocery stores, he knew us as kids real well. So we knew it was going to happen. Every time there was a holiday, it wasn't like we thought, oh, Easter we're going to do this, or it was like, Easter we're going to go give out some hams. Thanksgiving we're giving out turkeys, and it was usually about 50, of each.
Danny was on Waterloo when he grew up. He lived in a house on the street there. And I lived on 173rd Street. There never was any trouble in any of those streets because everyone knew Danny was there. The Italians live over here, across by Collinwood High School. No one ever got hurt. Even though the mafia was there, If ever trouble came down those streets, Danny took care of it.
When you walk around the streets and they said, there goes Danny Green, well, it was almost like, there goes my friend. The ones that feared him more, they would say, there goes Danny Green in a different tone of voice. But the one that you liked the most was the one that smiled and said, there goes Danny Green.
Danny looked after the neighborhood. There's a story that he ran out a group of Hell's Angels motorcycle gang members because they were, causing a ruckus.
He was supposed to have gone over to the Hells Angels house with 3 sticks of dynamite, knocked on the door, smoking a cigar. He lit the fuse and he stood there when the fellow came to the door and he says, if anything happens to this man, I'm gonna blow you up, I'm gonna blow your house up, I'm gonna blow up every Hells Angels I can find. And the guy's looking at this fuse and Danny pulled it out and he threw it over the edge of the porch and the blasting cap went off. Pop. And he said, next time, buddy, that's gonna be up your butt. And he turned around and he walked off the porch.
In the Collinwood area, he was a hero. He bought meals for people. He paid for medical expenses and dental expenses. He knew that few people could come into his area without someone mentioning that there's, someone that shouldn't be in our areas here. He was well taken care of his own community, and he took care of his own people. So he was highly respected and liked in his community. Outside, he was a pain because they didn't like competition.
Danny even struck up a relationship with Ed Kovacic. Since their first meeting when Danny was president of the Longshoremen's Union, Ed Kovacic had followed Danny's criminal exploits with a watchful eye.
And bombs were always being used in Cleveland. Very few of the bombings were ever solved. When there were a series of bombings in the Collinwood neighborhood, my partner and I were assigned to that neighborhood. I moved into Collinwood, completely unaware of the fact that I had moved a street away from where Danny Green lived. Now, I remember Danny from that first encounter with the Longshoremen. And I'd followed his career in the media, and then we started following him. We were trying to figure out what organized crime was all about. There's no way to tell this story chronologically, so now I'm going to have to skip ahead a little. Danny and I became friends, sort of friends. We sort of had a working relationship. Did I like him? Yeah. Did I like what he did? Nope. No. Did I want to put him in the penitentiary? Yes. But then one night I got a call from Danny. He wanted me to meet him at the Charter House. And he handed me a broken clothespin, battery, blasting cap, and a timer. And he said that he had parked his car at the Charter House parking lot, and when he backed out, this woman had backed in very close to him. And he had to cut his wheel. Well, this clothespin was a device that was rigged with 2 thumbtacks, so when he backed his car up, the clothespin would be squeezed closed by the tire. And the 2 thumbtacks would make contact and the bomb would detonate. But when Danny turned the wheel, he broke the clothespin. We talked for a few minutes and I said, Danny, where are the explosives? And he says, those are going back to the son of a bitch that sent them to me. And I said, Danny, if Sean goes up, I got to testify to what you just said. He said, nobody will believe you anyhow.
And at that time, because he had pulled a stunt like this, some people think that it was just a matter of time for a number of reasons as to who got who first. And Danny Green is generally considered to be the one who bombed and killed Shonda Burns.
The feud between Danny Green and Shonda Burns was running at full steam when on the evening of Holy Saturday, Shonda was having a drink with friends at Christie's Lounge.
I just got assigned to the bomb squad, and Sean went up, got in his car behind a bar on West 25th in Detroit. and the bomb went off. And there was a church nearby, St. Malachy's. People were in the church, and body parts came down outside the church. Literally blown to pieces.
You know, I was at St. Malachy's when Shonda Burns got blown up. I was sitting in church, and we were at, it was Holy Saturday services, and I played the guitar, so I was sitting up in the front, and they were going to have this movie that showed creation, and the church got dark. You know, Father Paul Ritz came and sat down, and we were all sitting there, and all of a sudden, the church lit up like a red tornado. And Father Paul says, "Go and see what happened." So I opened the side door, and I thought I was in a war zone. There was sparks, and it was fire. Everybody was screaming. I came back, and I said, "I think something blew up." And we couldn't leave. You know, Holy Saturday services are long. We couldn't leave because the police were coming and picking up Shonda Burns' body all over the front of our church.
As far as I can determine, it's a white male. The part that we've got recovered, just the upper torso.
There's several pieces.
Yeah, there's pieces all over the place.
Though Ed Kovacic heard Danny threaten to kill Shonda in conversation, it seemed that everyone knew who did it, but the murder officially remained unsolved. Danny, the proud Catholic, knew his New Testament. Live by the sword, die by the sword.
There was an area in Collinwood that he was not connected to, but I mean, would argue it all the time. And they were Italians. We didn't associate amongst ourselves with him. He wanted to kill us. If we were Italian, he wanted to kill us.
Soon after Shonda Burns' bombing, the Italians from Collinwood came looking for Danny.
They had put a bomb in the front of his building, I think a 2 or 3 story building out in Waterloo, and they put a bomb in the back of his house. The bomb in the front blew up and blew the bomb in the back of the house away from the house. And the bomb in the back of the house did not go off. It was connected to a gasoline can and everything. And he and his, I think, 17-year-old girlfriend rode the rubble down, and he had ended up with some cracked ribs and everything.
When police and bomb experts arrived on the scene, they found the second bomb, unexploded, at the rear of the demolished building. Later, bomb experts discovered that the blasting caps were faulty. A bomb technician had commented, "Had this bomb gone off, half of the block would have gone up in flames."
Police have issued arrest warrants for the 2 men they say are responsible for blowing up Dan Green's home. So far, those men have not been caught, and police are expected to go to the grand jury this week to seek indictments.
There were 2 bombs. When the first bomb went off inside the place, he was with his girlfriend, and they heard the glass breaking, and they jumped up and they ran in the back, and he got next to a refrigerator, and he said it was like riding an elevator. They just kind of went down to the bottom, hit the bottom, and bounced around a little bit, and went to the hospital. She was fine. The second bomb hadn't gone off because of the stupidity of the bomb makers. They took 2 blasting caps and they put them together, and they added up the strength of the 2 caps. And they added up the number of the 2 blasting caps, and it was higher than what was needed to detonate military explosives. And the 1 blasting cap went off and the other one didn't. And they had it attached to a 5-gallon can of gas. And if that would have gone off, the 5 gallons can of gas and the bomb, well, it would have been devastating to the neighborhood.
So I went out to talk to Danny Green. But when I set this up, I went to the head of the Cleveland Intelligence Unit, a guy named Andy Vaniel. And he said, "Well, I'll go with you." He said, "You don't want to go out there alone." This guy, Danny Green, was really a tough guy. I mean, a sharp criminal mind, but also physically tough. And so Andy Vaniel and I went out to talk to him. By now he was living in a trailer because his building was blown up, and he had the Irish flag flying outside his trailer.
He had no family. And Ireland became his family. That's what all the green was about. That's why he used green ink in his fountain pens. That's why he wore green. That's why everything he had was colored green. That's why he flew the Irish flag.
Danny Green was the boss, and he called it the Celtic Club. And it was based on the reason for that name was based on Danny's intense interest in his Irish and Celtic roots. Danny was very, very well read in Irish history. His number one enforcer was a guy by the name of Keith Ritson, who was the number one guy who was out planting bombs, and there were several other members of the group, and that was the Celtic Club. It was really nothing more than the Irish Mafia. Bombs were flying left and right during that era. So many bombs that Cleveland was dubbed Bomb City, USA, in the newspapers, and the local office of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms had to triple itself in size and manpower to deal with the problem.
In our cars, we had automatic starters. We'd never get in the car unless we started and then go itself. And we always were cautious where we parked our car and what we did.
Bombs have a language. If somebody's doing something and you want them to stop, and it's not too bad, you might lay a stick of dynamite on the hood of their car. And that means stop what you're doing. If you're really mad at them, you blow their car up. But if you put a command bomb on, you want to kill them. A command bomb means there has to be an action for the bomb to detonate. Turn the key of the car, press a button, some kind of a remote control device.
They were the bomb capital of the world because they found a method that was so intimidating that even if you saw the person who put the bomb in the car, you weren't going to testify.
And that's where Danny Green was different. He had no fear. He had this ambition to take over. Nothing was going to stop him. The soldiers in mob boss Jack Licavoli's crew were actually fearful because this guy, they tried to kill him so many times, and he was getting the reputation that he was indestructible.
I know what you're trying to do. I understand. I'm not giving you a headache, but I want to speak to talk to the lawyer.
You just talk to us and...
No, I'm not going to talk to you. I can't now.
This is about the 4th time someone's tried to kill you. How do you account for the fact that you survive each time?
You want me to give you that Irish version?
What's the Irish
version? The guy
version?
upstairs pulls the string, you're gone. There's no other way. The carnage that could have been wreaked here was unbelievable. And, anyone that would be involved in this type of endeavor, horrible, it's a crime, should be put in the cage.
He would sit out there with his shirt off and everything and dare them to come by there and do it. You know, that's in the Collingwood area where a lot of these guys grew up. And they would ride by there and he'd cuss them out.
Perhaps it was the spreading rumor of Danny's invincibility that led mobster and union official John Nardi to him. The two men found each other and formed a union that brought havoc to the Cleveland Mafia. John Scalish was Cleveland's silver-haired mafia don for 3 decades. He was a well-respected boss, and his rule more or less maintained order in Cleveland's La Cosa Nostra. When John Scalish died in November of 1976, he had named no successor. His death threw the family balance into upheaval. Mob members like Nardi and Angelo Leonardo became enraged when the entire operations fell into the hands of James Jack White Licavoli, an unlikely choice for mafia chieftain.
You gotta understand, they run things up there, and they do a better job than we can do. So he says, if Licavoli or whoever's the boss says, you're not allowed on the hill, that's it, you're not allowed on the hill.
And I don't harbor any ill will on the basis of personality. And if Mr. Licavoli were to sit right across from me right now, I'd tell him the same thing, that he's nothing but a creep.
One of the stories I heard was that after Danny got blown up, John Nardi came to the hospital and said, you and I have several mutual enemies, and I think we ought to get together and fight them off together.
Well, Danny wanted to take over. He wanted to take over the rackets, labor racketeering, gambling, vending machines. He wanted his hands on the skim that was coming in from the Las Vegas casinos, which were controlled in part by the Cleveland mob. So he, along with his partner John Nardi, they wanted to assume control of the Cleveland mob. You don't assume control of an organized crime group without having a war.
I guess he felt he had a birthright to some sort of significant role. And of course, he didn't feel he was getting his just desserts. And then he had a feud with Leo Morceri, who was Licavoli's cousin.
One of Jack White's first orders as head of the family was to promote his cousin Leo Mosseri to underboss. At age 69, Leo Lips Mosseri was a senior member of La Cosa Nostra, and as such was both feared and respected.
Danny Green disrespected and he embarrassed Jack White and the crew up on Murray Hill. He did not fall in line. He did his own thing, and basically he was brazen about it. And not only did Jack White think he was behind the killing of Shonda Burns, but Jack White's underboss, his name was Lips Mosseri, and he got in an argument with Nardi. It was seen on Murray Hill, and they had some words. And of course, Lips knew that Nardi was with Green, so he got an Italian and a Irishman together, which is unusual. And next thing you know, Lips Mosseri disappeared, and his body was found in a blood-soaked trunk in Akron.
The thing that Danny didn't understand about organized crime in Cleveland was the mafia itself, the breadth of this organization, not so much locally, but nationally, how they were tied in from different cities and what power they had and what pride they had in this organization, that nobody messed with them unless you were law enforcement. You didn't mess with the mob. And that's something that Danny didn't understand. And when he and John Nardi had Leo Mosseri killed, I don't think Danny realized that the whole force of the organization was going to be brought down on him because of that one particular murder. When Danny killed Shonda Burns, that was one thing. Shonda was not part of the organization. He was not part of the mafia. But when Danny killed Leo Mosseri, or had Leo Mosseri killed, that was a different story, and that's the point that Jack Licavoli had to have John Nardi and Danny Green killed, because that was the underboss of the Cleveland Mafia. You don't kill the underboss of the Cleveland Mafia.
In his quest to kill Danny Green, Jack Licavoli arranged a meeting with a well-known hitman from California named Ray Ferrito. Licavoli offered Ferrito 25% of the gambling profits from Warren and Youngstown if he would kill Nardi and Green. He accepted the job and asked Butchie Cisternino to get started on the legwork. Little did Licavoli know that while arrangements were being made for Danny's murder, another reason for La Cosa Nostra to hate the Irishman was about to come to light. 29-year-old Jerry Linhart, a secretary with the FBI's bank robbery division, met Kenneth Ciarcia at a Christmas party for the car dealership where her fiancé worked. Ciarcia was good friends with Tony Liberatore, a mob figure with strong ties to Murray Hill. Danny Green's status as an FBI informant wouldn't remain secret for long.
He was an informant for the FBI, and he was providing them with information on a national level, people from New York that were involved here in Cleveland. We could have got him on an extortion charge, and I trusted John T. Corrigan with my life. And one day I asked him why we never proceeded with the extortion cases. And he said that the FBI had asked him to not to proceed, that they needed him. And I said, who? And I named the man who was the head of the FBI in Cleveland. He said, no, higher than that. And I said, J. Edgar. And John smiled and he said, I really don't want to say it. He said, but let's just say I couldn't say no. And we used to say this: if the FBI arrested all their confidential informants, we'd have no more crime in Cleveland, because everybody was snitching to the FBI. Everybody was an FBI snitch.
Jerry, in an unprecedented breach of Justice Department security, entered the top-secret informant room of the FBI and hand-copied a list marked TE, or Top Echelon, the highest ranking in federal informants. Among the names on the list, Teamster figure Tony Hughes, and at the top of the list was Mr. Patrick himself, Daniel J. Green.
I saw that list. It confirmed what a lot of people believed, but nobody really knew. They all became suspicious of him when he killed, was it Fredo? when he shot Fredo. And as soon as he shot him, he ran to the FBI, and the FBI turned him in, as I recall. And then ultimately he was acquitted. So why would somebody kill a competitor and then seek refuge with the FBI? It's kind of suspicious, isn't it?
Unaware that his status as an FBI informant had been revealed, Danny went on with business as usual. He and Nardi began working on a plan to take over a financially ailing Texas cattle ranch and sell the meat through a discount purchasing program for labor union members. Nardi set it up so that the New York Mafia Gambino family would back the endeavor, and Danny would again be the point man. Butchie's sister Nino saw a trip to New York to meet with the Gambino family as the perfect opportunity to kill Danny. He waited for Nardi and Green to leave for New York, and then planted the bomb on his car.
Collingwood guys had rigged a bomb on his car, and they were driving down the street, and the Collingwood guys, according to the stories and legends, were running behind the car, pushing this garage door opener, and the bomb wouldn't go off.
On May 17, 1977, after several attempts on his life, John Nardi was killed by a mafia car bomb. Despite hiring Ferrito to kill Green and Nardi, Jack Licavoli had also assigned John Curly Montana to hunt down Nardi. The FBI investigation into Nardi's death maintained Montana and another individual committed the murder.
The word come out that four of us were gonna get killed. Jackie Presser, Jack White, Curly Montana, and Tony Hughes. So we watched everything we did. And of course, we were glad to hear he got killed.
Shortly after Nardi's murder, Danny granted an interview to Bill McKay, a reporter who he trusted because of his Irish-American background.
Did you talk to John Nardi at all about this? I haven't personally seen John in about 3.5 months, but I did send him a message very recently that John, be careful. It's out here very, very strong in the streets that somebody's out to get you. Now, from what I can say is everybody says they heard this also. The investigators should start right there and go from who told you and where did they hear it from. So you got any thoughts about where these people are from? I think possibly, most probably the bomb was made here. The people could have been imported.
Danny boldly declared, if these maggots in this so-called mafia want to come after me, I'm over here by the Celtic Club. I'm not hard to find. Licavoli and the rest of the Cleveland Mafia were incensed, and killing the Irishman became their priority. As far as the Cleveland mob was concerned, Danny Green had used up all of his 9 lives. Ronnie Carabia called Ray Ferrito and told him that something had come up. The two men listened to a cassette tape recording made from a tap that had been placed on Danny Green's phone. On the tape was a recording of Danny's girlfriend setting up an appointment for Danny to visit the dentist. They now knew exactly where Danny Green would be at 3 p.m. on October 6th. All they needed was a plan. On October 6th, an hour before Danny's dental appointment, Ferrito and Ronnie Carabia drove to the dentist Lyndhurst building on Brainerd Road in 2 cars, a bomb car and a getaway car.
And what they did, they had the bomb car ready. And when Danny Green pulled into the spot on Brainerd Place, he would always arrive too early, too late, but never on time, always unpredictable. And he would always park his car between 2 other cars that were there, okay? Just as luck would have it, after he parked his car and went into the building, the car on his driver's side pulled out, and they zipped the bomb car in there. The bomb car had the bomb, it's called diamond plate. You know what diamond plate steel is? It's these running boards on trucks made out of it.
It's a quarter-inch diamond plate, and you can see what's called furrings in here, which is actually, it's darkened, and it shows where the seat of the dynamite sat. It's near the seat of the explosive.
Well, they shaped the charge like this, so when it went off, it would just blow into him and kill him.
The bomb car, which at that time, it still is, it's a 70 Nova, which they used, parked next to where Danny Green parked. So that just basically shows how the actual bomb was placed. And of course, when it went off, Danny Green was in this area fumbling with his keys, trying to open his brown Lincoln Continental that he was driving that day. It was an instant blast, and Danny Green's body was actually sucked back under his car. If you know anything about explosives, you get a crater, you get a positive wave, and you get a negative wave. The negative wave actually tends to suck debris back into what would be a crater. And in this particular case, obviously, Danny Green's clothes were blown off of him. He was killed instantly. his left arm was about 80 feet away from his body. And the thing to remember on these things, when you investigate cases like this, it's a tragedy that a life was taken, a tragedy.
I found out Danny had died. I was working for this company, and my supervisor called me into the office. And Danny and I had been divorced at that time, but they knew we were still friends, etc. And he said, I had something to tell you. He said, Danny was just blown up. Of course, that was a shock to me. Here you're working, and someone tells you part of your life that you knew was blown away. And my fear was, how was I going to tell my children? And of course, through media, they knew, we all knew at the same time.
It was very shocking. It was like our whole world was kind of over then. We didn't have anybody to kind of protect us, to be there for us. It was kind of like it just turned the page.
Have you threatened Mr. Licavoli's life?
No, ma'am, I haven't. I wouldn't do anything like that to Mr. Licavoli. I think he's a gentleman and a scholar. And whoever murdered Mr. Patrick, I think they're very good professionals. They do a very good job, and I also think they're a piece of garbage.
A massive FBI crackdown has put a crimp in the style of Cleveland area mobsters. 8 of them have been nabbed in connection with recent gangland killings. And our Tappy Phillips has details. She's live now with our action cam at the new federal building. Tappy?
Oh, Jenny, we were just upstairs at the FBI office where they told us they believe they have wiped out what they call a Cosa Nostra in Cleveland. And this all started this morning with the arrest of a James Licavoli. And you see him now going into the federal building.
A few days after Danny Green was killed, one of the most effective and far-reaching cooperative efforts in U.S. law enforcement history began. A strike force of various agencies, including the FBI, the Cleveland Police Department, and the U.S. Attorney's Office, was amassed to solve the historic Mafia murder.
The biggest evidence in the case that broke the case is this drawing right here. And this was when the blast went off, a lady by the name of Deborah Spoth was sitting in the car with her husband at the corner near Brainerd Place. And not only was she a policeman's daughter, but she was an artist, a freelance artist. And she actually drew that picture right there. And she turned that into the FBI, and that picture is that guy right there, Ray Ferrito.
And Ray flipped because of Jack White being so cheap. Part of what Ray was promised for killing Danny was a new car. And they told him to keep the getaway car, which was an old Ohio State patrol car. And what tripped him up, my partner had this picture, and he called me in his office, and he says, "Hey, who's this?" And I says, "That's Ray Ferrito," because we knew him from Collinwood. He says, "That's the guy that was in the bomb car." But we couldn't associate the bomb car, the car that contained the bomb, and the car that contained the bombers. We couldn't, there was no link. And he got to this part of the report, and he read off a sticker number. In Ohio, you have to have a little sticker that you put on your plate every year. And it's numbered. And he read that number, and then an FBI agent was checking out the car of the suspected bombers. I think we all caught it about the same time. They were sequential. They bought the sticker numbers for the bomb car and the getaway car at the same time, and they were issued sequential sticker numbers, and that tied the bomb car and the getaway car together. And then the FBI went out and got Ray Ferrito. Ray Ferrito broke.
You've heard that, the code of honor, omerta, you just don't testify against your own. That held for many years, but now guys were, we were catching these guys and they were in their 50s and 60s. They don't want them to go to prison. So they started turning. Ferrito turned. Who would have guessed that? He was a longtime mafioso and he had killed people.
A fellow by the name of Jimmy the Weasel Fradiano, testified all over the country, and he's in the witness protection program. By then, we kind of understood we had our first awakening of this La Cosa Nostra sort of organization.
Butchie Cisternino, guilty of murder and arson. Ronald Carabia, guilty of murder and arson. Thomas Sanito, not guilty. Angelo Leonardo, not guilty. And supposed kingpin of the Cleveland Mafia, James Licavoli, not guilty. I talked to Licavoli's attorney, James Willis, shortly after the verdict came down, and he said he was never really worried.
I don't think that these men are dangerous. They're gentle souls. They're just misunderstood.
Well, I only represented one person from that point on, and that was Licavoli. And he had a state trial. He was found not guilty. They tried him for the theft of the FBI documents. He was acquitted. And then they tried him on RICO.
The three that are being released still face federal charges. Even though they're free men tonight, they face charges in federal court.
Cleveland's boss, James Jack White Licavoli, didn't have long to celebrate in his acquittal in the murder of Danny Green. Federal indictments for violation of the RICO, or Racketeer Influence Corrupt Organizations Act, were unsealed as he was arrested again in 1982, along with several other mob associates.
Racketeering and Corrupt Organizations Act. And it's easier to prove than actually a conspiracy. All you have to show is that there were a certain number of people involved in the criminal enterprise, and that as a consequence of the enterprise, certain acts were done. And they said in this instance, the predicate acts were the killing of John Nardi and the killing of Danny Green.
There were 4 cases that were going on in the FBI in Cleveland. And sure, Cleveland Police and the other agencies were working with us also in the task force, but there were 4 cases. One was Nardi, bomb killing of Nardi outside the Union Hall, Joint 41 in May of that year. The other one was the killing of Danny Green the same year. There was a bribery of an FBI clerk going on at the same time that the FBI didn't know about. And then we also had a wiretap on Jack White's house, which is out on Fairfield Court.
They were able to place a wiretap inside the home and record some of the meetings that the mafia boss and his lieutenants had, and they were actually monitored and recorded the conversations from across the street in one of these houses in the basement here.
When we played the tapes, he was on there talking about Danny Green and did you take care of the Green thing?
The prosecution is now starting to wrap up its case. One of its last big pieces of evidence was what I listened to this afternoon, and those were tapes of wiretaps taken by the FBI on the telephones of one of the defendants, James Licavoli, and another man who is not charged in this particular case, James Fradiano, in California.
To their great credit, the Fed stayed with it. They did a great job. They took all the witnesses that we convicted and turned, all their information, put together some great federal cases, and just wrapped it up. And 5 years after Danny Green was killed, there was no organized crime in Cleveland.
You know, it's not Cleveland. It's, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many people, it's the United States. I honestly believe that the death of Danny Green led to the absolute dissemination of La Cosa Nostra in this country. As a result of the death of Danny Green, you have Burrito, Jimmy the Weasel, Leonardo, and then all of a sudden it was like a dam burst, and people all over the country, made members, started opening up, and organized crime was exposed. He got blown up. There was a picture of his arm. His finger was pointing like this. And I said to my partner, I said, you know what he's doing? He's pointing at the guys that got him. He's going to get every one of them. And he did. Got every one of them.
After several months at the top of the FBI's most wanted list, Tony Liberatore was finally arrested in Cleveland. He was convicted of his role in bribing an FBI secretary and sentenced to 12 years in prison. Mob boss James Licavoli received 17 years in the penitentiary at the Oxford, Wisconsin Correctional Institute, where he died at the age of 81. The Irishman's life's work was at last complete.
The case was remarkable, and when we went through it, you know, we knew we had accomplished something big. But as history went on, we realized how big it really was.
Danny Green's most important legacy was left in his death. It was his murder that sparked the events leading to a parade of La Cosa Nostra defectors, whose secrets would be crucial to the success of the government's war against the mafia.
When we were able to prosecute Angelo Leonardo, we flipped him in a big drug conspiracy case, and he became the highest active member of the mob. He was the underboss of Cleveland. He inherited after we locked up Jack White. So Angelo Leonardo became the highest government witness, highest placed mob government witness at that time, and he testified against the mob.
All the good people went to the penitentiary. The Tommy Sanito, good person. Butchie, Sister Nino, died in the penitentiary, good person. Ronnie Carabia did about 20-something years. In the wake of Danny Green's death and all of the trials that followed, whatever organization that they had became decimated.
Some considered Danny Green a criminal. Many others saw him as a protector. But in Cleveland, everyone still considers him a legend.